All right. Ready to dive into Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah, let's do it.
This book is like the personal finance classic. Everyone's talking about it, so we got to unpack it and see what the hype is all about.
It's interesting, right? Because it's not just about like dollars and cents. It really gets you thinking differently about wealth and success. You know, Kiyosaki really flips the script on all that traditional financial advice.
Totally. He wants us to challenge everything, starting with what we think an asset is. Like most people think their house is their biggest asset, right?
Right, but Kiyosaki's like, hold up, is it really though? He makes the point that if something's always taking money out of your pocket,
Mortgage payments, repairs, all that.
exactly, then it's not really an asset. It's more like a liability, even if it's, a roof over your head.
Okay, yeah. That's where things get interesting. So he's saying it's not about what you own, but more like what's actually putting money back in your pocket.
Exactly. It's about building that asset column, right? He wants us to focus on the things that generate income rentals, stocks, businesses for, the stuff that works for us, even when we're not working.
Ah, okay. So instead of getting stuck in that make more, spend more cycle, what he calls the rat race, it's about setting up those streams of passive income.
Precisely. That's where the whole two dads thing comes in. You've got Kiyosaki's own dad, the poor dad, represents that traditional path, right? Get a degree, get a job, work hard. But then there's his friend's dad, the rich dad, and he's got a completely different approach.
The self-made entrepreneur who teaches him all about financial smarts, right? Building wealth through assets and all that.
Exactly. It's that difference in mindset that makes this book what it is. It's about challenging those deep down money beliefs we get from our families, from society, that we don't even realize we have.
Like Kiyosaki saying, hey, there's another way to play this game, but first, you got to learn the rules. And for him, a big part of that is financial education.
Absolutely. He's all about investing in your financial literacy, and he says that, honestly, traditional education doesn't really cut it. Think about it. When do most people learn about investing? Taxes, building a business, usually after they're out in the real world trying to figure it all out on their own.
Yeah, good point. It's like school might prepare you for a job, but not necessarily for like building actual wealth.
Huge difference. And a perfect example of that is the story he tells about those wealthy businessmen from back in 1923. I mean, these guys had it all, right? But a lot of them ended up broke.
Wow. So it makes you think, what were they missing?
Exactly. Kiyosaki would say they didn't have that financial IQ. They knew how to make money, but maybe not how to hang on to it, how to make it grow, how to protect it.
And to spot opportunities that most people miss. Like when Kiyosaki and his buddy Mike bought that old comic book for like nothing and started renting it out to their friends.
Right. Even as kids, they were already thinking about money differently. Instead of just spending it, they found a way to make it work for them. It's that entrepreneurial spirit he wants everyone to tap into.
And that reminds me of the story where they create their own toothpaste, trying to sell it too.
Yeah, that's a good one. Shows how young they were when they started thinking about creating value, even if their product was, well, let's just say it was a little rough around the edges.
Maybe a little too much grit in that toothpaste. But speaking of grit, Kiyosaki talks about how fear and laziness can really hold people back from financial success too.
Oh, yeah. Those are big ones. Fear can be paralyzing, keeps us in our comfort zones even when we know we should be pushing ourselves.
It's just easier to stick with what we know, even if it's not really getting us where we want to be.
Totally. And I think that's where Kiyosaki's own experience as an entrepreneur is so valuable. He gets those fears because he's been there, but he's also proof that you can overcome them.
He gives us like actual tools to deal with those fears too, like that whole remember the Alamo thing.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. It's not about like glorifying losing, though, right? It's
Yeah.
more about seeing failure as part of the learning process. Like Kiyosaki was saying, Texans don't shy away from that part of their history. They use it to their advantage.
Yeah, yeah. It's like he's saying embrace the setbacks, learn from them, and come back even stronger.
Totally. He even goes as far as saying, like, failing is part of winning.
Interesting. Now, another thing Kiyosaki talks about is minding your own business,
Yeah.
but he's not just talking about like starting a company.
Right. It's way bigger than that.
Yeah.
It's more about taking control of your own financial future,
Mhm.
building that asset column instead of relying on a paycheck forever.
So it's about making your money work harder than you do.
Exactly. Setting up systems that keep bringing in income, even when you're not working. Remember that story about the two water contractors, Ed and Bill?
Oh, yeah. It's the one who's like killing himself hauling buckets of water, right? And Bill's the one building the pipeline.
Yeah, such a good analogy. Ed's stuck in the rat race, always trading his time for money. But Bill, He's building something that'll eventually generate passive income, even if it takes a little more time up front.
Okay, I see. And that connects to his cash flow quadrant idea, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's where he breaks down the different ways people make money as an employee, a self-employed person, a big business owner, or an investor. And his point is, the folks who are really in control of their financial freedom are usually the business owners and investors.
Because they're not just trading time for money. They've figured out how to use systems and assets to create real income.
Exactly. Now, he's not saying everyone has to become a CEO or some big-time investor, but
Hmm.
you got to understand the different ways to generate income and then think about where you fit in, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's about making informed choices about where your money comes from, not just like blindly following the crowd. And, speaking of knowledge, Kiyosaki's big on finding mentors too. Those rich dads we can all learn from.
For sure. He's all about learning from people who've already done what you want to do. And not just learning, but like modeling their behavior, their mindset, the whole deal.
He even says, like, sometimes it's worth taking a job for the experience or the connections, even if it doesn't pay much, or even if you got to work for free for a bit.
Exactly. It's about investing in yourself,
Yeah.
seeing the long-term value of learning new skills and building relationships with the right people.
Which kind of leads into something that might be, I don't know, a little controversial for some people. He's pretty upfront about how the rich use corporations to their advantage.
Right. And he makes it clear it's not about doing anything shady or illegal. It's about understanding how the system works.
Sure.
Right. And he makes the point that corporations often provide tax advantages and asset protection that most people aren't even aware of.
So it's about like empowering yourself with that knowledge and then using it strategically.
Exactly. He wants us to be smart about the system, not afraid of it.
And to be willing to like think differently. He's all about questioning everything we think we know about money, like the idea that all debt is bad.
Yeah, he makes a clear distinction between good debt and bad debt. Good debt is debt that's actually putting money in your pocket, like a loan on a rental property that brings in more than the mortgage payment. Bad debt just takes money out of your pocket, like, say, credit card debt.
So it's about being strategic, not just following those old school rules that might not actually be serving us anymore. It's almost like he's encouraging us to kind of hack the system, but like hack it ethically.
Yeah, but know the rules before you start playing the game, right? Like,
Yeah.
he even talks about getting a second job, not even for the extra money, but just to learn something new.
Whoa, really? Most people are just trying to hustle for extra cash, but he's talking about like long game skills and knowledge that could pay off way more later on.
That's Kiyosaki for you. He's all about that long-term thinking. He'd rather learn a new skill, master a new concept, than blow it on a fancy car or a bigger house. Those are just liabilities in his book.
And it's interesting how he challenges a lot of those like traditional status symbols, the big house, the fancy car, all that. He's more focused on like real wealth, real freedom.
Exactly. It's about having options, being able to choose how you spend your time, who you work with, what projects you take on. He even talks about how your I don't wants can actually be like a roadmap to success.
Okay, now that sounds kind of backwards. How can saying I don't want to something actually help you succeed?
Well, think about it. He gives the example of people who say, I don't want to fix toilets, so they won't invest in real estate. But he's like, well, neither do I. That's why I hire a property manager.
Oh, I see, I see. So it's about like working smarter, not harder.
Yeah. Finding those creative solutions, building systems that play to your strengths and outsource the things you don't want to do.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've covered a lot of ground here. As we start to wrap up our deep dive into Rich Dad, Poor Dad, what are your like top takeaways from the book?
For me, it really comes down to questioning assumptions. Kiyosaki makes you look at money and success through a whole new lens. And that's huge. He doesn't want you to just accept things the way they are. He wants you to take control, never stop learning, never stop growing.
Love it. It's a call to action. Don't just read this book. Do something with it. Start building those assets. Find your mentors. Challenge those I don't want.
Exactly. And remember, it's a journey. You're not going to figure it all out overnight. There are going to be bumps in the road. But keep learning, keep growing, and don't give up on those dreams.
Beautifully said. Now, for everyone listening, what resonated most with you? What will you take away from Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad? We'd love to hear your thoughts.